There are moments when fate chooses you, not because you are ready, but because the world needs what only you can become. For me, Jasmine, that moment came when the Alpha King's eyes found mine across a crowded hall, and I knew my life as a simple maid had ended forever. Welcome, dear listeners, to a tale of how an invisible servant became the most powerful woman in the kingdom. I am Jasmine, and what I am about to share will show you that love can be both salvation and danger, that obsession can transform into destiny, and that the blood running through our veins holds secrets we never imagined. If you treasure stories of forbidden romance and the courage to shatter ancient wrongs, I promise this journey will stir something deep within your soul. Listen until the end, for what begins in the shadows of the kitchen hearths will rise to claim a throne. This is my story. A story that unfolds in the stone halls of Shadowmere Castle, where alphas ruled with iron fists and omegas like me existed only to serve. Where one battle-scarred king would return from war to find the one thing that could heal his broken heart or destroy him completely. I have always known how to be invisible. In the 3 years I spent scrubbing pots in the castle kitchens of Shadowmere, I perfected the art of becoming nothing more than a shadow against stone walls. Omegas, like me, learned early that survival meant keeping our eyes down, our voices soft, our presence forgettable. The nobles who ruled our kingdom looked through us as if we were merely another fixture of their grand halls, no more worthy of notice than the torches flickering in their sconces. My days began before dawn and ended long after the last nobleman had retired to his chambers. I carried water from the wells, scrubbed floors worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, and served meals I would never be permitted to taste. The other kitchen maids and I moved through our tasks with practiced efficiency, speaking in whispers when we spoke at all. We knew what happened to Omega servants who drew too much attention. Some disappeared into the beds of cruel lords and were discarded like soiled linens. Others were sold to brothels when they proved inconvenient. Invisibility was not merely a strategy. It was our only protection. But everything changed the night Alpha King Christopher returned from war. The castle had been preparing for weeks. Every stone was scrubbed, every banner hung with perfect precision, every dish polished until it gleamed in the torchlight. The king had been gone for 3 years, leading his warriors in brutal campaigns against the northern kingdom. Rumors of his deeds had filtered back to us through soldiers who returned maimed and haunted. They spoke of his rage on the battlefield, the way he fought as if seeking his own death, the coldness that had settled over him since his first mate's betrayal. They called him the Scarred King, though the deepest wounds were not the ones carved into his flesh. The welcome feast was a spectacle of excess. The great hall blazed with 1,000 candles, their light dancing across tapestries that told the history of our realm. Nobles dressed in their finest silks and velvets filled the long tables, their laughter echoing off vaulted ceilings. I moved among them with a heavy pitcher of wine, refilling goblets with steady hands, my eyes fixed on the floor as I had been taught. I heard him before I saw him. The hall fell silent as Alpha King Christopher entered, and the sudden quiet made my heart stutter in my chest. I risked a glance toward the dais where he would take his seat, and the breath left my lungs. He was magnificent in a way that had nothing to do with beauty and everything to do with raw, primal power. Tall and broad-shouldered, his body was built for war, every muscle carved from years of battle. Dark hair fell past his shoulders in waves that caught the candlelight, and a thick beard covered his jaw. But it was his eyes that held me frozen. Storm gray and fierce, they swept across the hall with the intensity of a predator surveying his territory. Then those eyes found mine. The world tilted. Something passed between us in that instant, something ancient and undeniable that sang through my blood like wildfire. My Omega instincts screamed at me to lower my gaze, to remember my place, but I could not look away. He stared at me across the crowded hall, as if I were the only living soul in the entire kingdom, as if he could see straight through my carefully constructed invisibility to something deeper, something I had spent my entire life hiding. His nostrils flared slightly, his jaw tightened, and I knew with terrifying certainty that he scented me, that whatever bond had just sparked to life between us was not one-sided. I finally tore my gaze away, my hands trembling so badly that wine sloshed over the rim of the pitcher. I retreated toward the kitchen, my heart hammering against my ribs. This could not be happening. Kings did not notice Omega maids. They certainly did not stare at them with such fierce intensity that it felt like being touched. I made it 3 steps before a commanding voice rang out across the hall. "Bring me that girl." The words fell like an executioner's blade. Every head in the great hall turned toward me. I froze, the picture nearly slipping from my nerveless fingers. Lords and ladies whispered behind jeweled hands, their eyes sharp with curiosity and contempt. An Omega being summoned by the king could mean only one thing, and my stomach twisted with dread. The captain of the guard approached me, his expression carefully neutral. "The king wishes to see you in his private chambers." Now, I wanted to run. Every instinct I possessed screamed at me to flee into the night and never return. But there was no refusing a king's command. To disobey would mean death, or worse. I set down the pitcher with shaking hands and followed the captain through corridors that suddenly felt like the path to my own execution. The king's chambers were in the highest tower, far from the servants' quarters where I slept on a straw mattress. The captain knocked once and stepped aside, gesturing for me to enter alone. I pushed open the heavy oak door, my throat so tight I could barely breathe. Alpha King Christopher stood by the window, his back to me, silhouetted against the night sky. He had removed his formal tunic, and I could see the brutal scars that crossed his bare back, evidence of battles that should have killed him. When he turned to face me, the candlelight revealed more scars along his chest, his arms, marks of a warrior who had survived what no man should survive. "Close the door," he commanded, his voice low and rough as gravel. I obeyed, my fingers fumbling with the latch. We were alone now, and the weight of that reality pressed down on me like a physical force. He moved toward me with predatory grace, each step deliberate, measured. I backed against the door, trapped between the wood and the most dangerous man in the realm. He stopped inches away, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the leather and steel, and something wilder beneath. "What is your name?" His gray eyes bored into mine, demanding truth. "Jasmine, Your Majesty." My voice came out as barely a whisper. "Jasmine." He repeated it as if testing the weight of it on his tongue. Then he did something that shattered every expectation I had carried into this room. He reached out slowly, giving me time to see his hand approach, and traced one calloused finger along my jaw with devastating gentleness. The touch ignited something inside me that I had never felt before. My skin burned where he touched me. My Omega nature surged forward, recognizing something in him that called to the deepest parts of my being. "Do you know what you are to me?" he asked, his voice dropping to a rough whisper that sent shivers down my spine. I shook my head, unable to form words. His hand moved from my jaw to cup my face, his thumb brushing across my lower lip. "You are either my salvation or my complete destruction, and I have not yet decided which terrifies me more." The summons came at dawn, delivered by the same stone-faced captain who had escorted me to the king's chambers 3 nights prior. I was to report immediately to serve as Alpha King Christopher's personal attendant. The words sent a chill through the kitchen staff. Personal attendants to the king did not typically return unchanged, if they returned at all. I gathered my meager possessions and followed the captain through corridors I had only cleaned, never walked as anything but invisible. The other servants watched me go with expressions ranging from pity to envy, though I could not fathom what there was to envy. I was walking toward a fate I did not choose and could not escape. The king's private wing was a world unto itself. My new quarters, though small, were finer than anywhere I had ever slept. A real bed with clean linens, a window overlooking the gardens, a wash basin with fresh water. It felt like a gilded cage, beautiful and suffocating in equal measure. My duties began immediately. I was to tend his chambers, prepare his meals, and most significantly, care for his wounds. The war had left its marks, not just on his soul but carved deep into his flesh. Some had healed poorly, others reopened with the strain of travel. When I first saw the extent of the damage beneath his tunic, my hands trembled with something beyond fear. It was rage at whatever had done this to him, followed swiftly by confusion at why I should care. "The gash along my ribs needs fresh bandages," he said that first morning, his voice carefully neutral as he sat on the edge of his bed. He watched me approach with those storm-gray eyes, tracking my every movement as if I might vanish if he looked away. I knelt beside him with clean cloth and healing salve, forcing my hands steady. The wound was angry and inflamed, evidence that he had been neglecting it. When I pressed the cloth to his skin, he did not flinch, though it must have burned. Instead, his hand came up to catch my wrist, not roughly, but with a gentleness that startled me. "You need not fear me, Jasmine." His voice was low, meant only for my ears. "I did not bring you here to harm you." "Then why, Your Majesty?" The question escaped before I could stop it. His jaw tightened. "Because when I look at you, the darkness recedes. And I have lived in darkness for so long, I had forgotten what light felt like." I did not know how to respond to such raw honesty, so I returned to tending his wounds in silence. But his words burrowed into my chest and took root there. The court's reaction to my new position was swift and venomous. Nobles who had never noticed my existence now watched my every move with calculating eyes. Ladies whispered behind their fans when I passed. Lords made crude jests about Omega maids warming the king's bed. I felt their contempt like a physical weight, pressing down on me until I could barely breathe. But it was the nights that revealed the true depth of Christopher's wounds. The first time I heard him scream, I was in my small chamber adjacent to his rooms. The sound tore through the silence like a blade, raw and agonized, barely human. I ran to his door without thinking, pushing it open to find him thrashing in his bed, caught in the grip of terrors I could not see. "Christopher!" I used his name without the title, too frightened to remember protocol. I grabbed his shoulders, trying to shake him awake before he injured himself on the bedposts. His eyes snapped open, wild and unseeing. His hand shot out and caught my throat, not squeezing but holding me in place with warrior's reflexes. For a heartbeat, I thought I would die. Then recognition flooded his gaze, and he released me as if I had burned him. "Jasmine." My name on his lips sounded like a prayer and a curse. "Forgive me. I thought you were—" He stopped, running, shaking hands through his tangled hair. "Who did you think I was?" I asked softly, sitting on the edge of his bed, though it was wildly inappropriate. "My first mate, Elena." The name came out bitter as poison. She was beautiful and clever, and I believed every lie that fell from her lips. While I led my warriors into battle, she sent word to the northern kingdom of our movements, our weaknesses. The ambush at Raven's Pass killed 300 of my men, warriors who trusted me to keep them safe. His voice cracked on the last words, and I saw what the court could not. Beneath the fearsome reputation and the scars, Christopher was a man drowning in guilt and betrayal, barely holding himself above water. "It was not your fault," I said, though I had no right to offer him absolution. She was my mate, my responsibility. I should have seen the serpent beneath the beauty. He looked at me then, truly looked at me, and something in his expression made my breath catch. "And now fate has given me you, and I am terrified of what that means." After that night, everything changed. Christopher began seeking my presence not for service but for something deeper. He would summon me to his private library in the evenings, asking me to read aloud from ancient texts while he sat by the fire, his eyes closed as if my voice alone could keep the demons at bay. Sometimes he would ask about my life, my thoughts, treating my words as if they mattered, as if I were more than the Omega Maid the world saw. "Do you ever dream of freedom?" he asked me one evening, his question hanging in the amber glow of candlelight. "Every Omega dreams of freedom, Your Majesty, but dreams and reality rarely meet." "Christopher," he corrected, his voice rough. "When we are alone, call me Christopher. I need to hear my name spoken without fear or calculation. Just once." I studied his face, seeing the loneliness etched into every line. "Christopher?" I repeated softly, and watched something in him ease, as if that simple intimacy was water in a desert. He reached across the space between us and took my hand, his calloused fingers intertwining with mine. "You are becoming necessary to me, Jasmine, more necessary than breath. Tell me I am not alone in feeling this pull between us." My heart hammered against my ribs. I should have lied, should have protected us both from this dangerous path, but I had never learned how to lie convincingly. "You are not alone." His grip tightened, and I saw hunger flash across his features, quickly controlled. "Then we are both in grave danger, because I am becoming obsessed with you, and obsession has only ever led me to ruin. As the days bled into weeks, I watched Christopher's obsession grow like a living thing. He found reasons to keep me near constantly. If I left his sight for too long, he would send for me with increasing urgency. He memorized my routines, appearing in hallways he had no reason to walk, his eyes seeking me out in crowded rooms. The court noticed. How could they not? And I realized with growing dread that I had become the most visible Omega in the entire kingdom, exposed in ways that would surely destroy me. But even knowing the danger, I could not bring myself to pull away, because I was becoming just as obsessed with him. The boundaries between king and servant dissolved so gradually that I could not pinpoint the exact moment they ceased to exist. What began as duty transformed into something far more dangerous, something that made my heart race and my hands tremble whenever Christopher entered a room. His touches became bolder, more deliberate. When I brought him his evening meal, his fingers would brush against mine as he took the tray, lingering far longer than necessary. The contact sent sparks racing up my arm, igniting something primal deep within me. He would hold my gaze as he did it, watching my reaction with an intensity that made me feel stripped bare despite being fully clothed. "Tell me about yourself, Jasmine," he commanded one evening as I poured his wine. We were alone in his chambers, the firelight casting dancing shadows across the stone walls. "Not what you do, but who you are. What do you dream of when sleep finally claims you?" I hesitated, unused to anyone caring about my inner thoughts. "I dream of forests, Your Majesty, of running beneath the full moon with silver light on my skin, of freedom that tastes like wild honey and smells like pine needles crushed beneath my feet." "Christopher," he reminded me, his voice dropping lower. "And those are beautiful dreams. Do you ever dream of more? Of love, perhaps? Of a mate who sees you as you truly are?" My cheeks burned. Omegas like me do not dream of love. We learn early that our bodies are for others' use, our hearts irrelevant to our purpose. Something dark and possessive flashed across his features. "Your heart is not irrelevant to me. Nothing about you is irrelevant to me." The air between us grew thick with unspoken desires. I knew I should retreat, should remember my place, but I remained rooted to the spot, caught in the gravity of his presence. "Jasmine." He rose from his chair and crossed to where I stood, moving with that predatory grace that never failed to make my pulse quicken. "I need you to understand something. What I feel for you goes beyond reason, beyond propriety. You have become essential to my very existence. When you are near, the demons quiet. When you smile, I remember what it feels like to be human rather than a weapon forged in blood and betrayal." "Christopher, this is forbidden," I whispered, though my body betrayed me by swaying toward him. "You are the Alpha King. I am nothing but an Omega Maid. The court would never—" "Damn the court," he growled, his hand coming up to cup my face with devastating tenderness. "Damn tradition and propriety and every rule that says I cannot feel what I feel. You make me alive again, Jasmine. Do you understand? For 3 years, I walked through this world as nothing more than a ghost wrapped in flesh, and then your eyes met mine across that hall, and I felt my heart beat for the first time since Elena's betrayal." Tears pricked my eyes at the raw honesty in his words. "I feel it too. This pull between us, like invisible threads binding my soul to yours. It terrifies me." "Good," he murmured, his thumb tracing the line of my cheekbone. "You should be terrified, because I am becoming obsessed with you, and I do not know how to stop even if I wanted to." The confession hung between us, heavy with promise and threat. Then he leaned down, giving me time to pull away, time to refuse. But I did not move. I could not move. His lips met mine in a kiss that shattered every defense I had built around my heart. It was not gentle, though it was not rough either. It was desperate, hungry, a man drowning and finding air for the first time. I kissed him back with equal fervor, my hands fisting in his tunic, pulling him closer as if I could merge our bodies into one. Something awakened inside me at that moment. Power surged through my veins like liquid lightning, hot and electric and utterly foreign. My skin began to glow faintly with silver light, and I gasped against his mouth, pulling back in shock. "What was that?" I breathed, staring at my hands as the light faded like dying embers. Christopher's eyes were wide, his expression caught between wonder and recognition. Your Omega nature responding to your true mate. But that light, Jasmine, that is not normal Omega power. That is something far older, far more rare. Fear clawed at my chest. What do you mean? I have seen that silver light only once before, in ancient texts describing the moon wolves, a bloodline thought extinct for generations, blessed with powers that made them nearly immortal, capable of healing and destruction in equal measure. He gripped my shoulders, his gaze boring into mine. Where did you come from, Jasmine? Who were your parents? I do not know, I admitted, shame coloring my words. I was found as a babe, abandoned at the gates of the orphanage. I have never known family or heritage. I am no one. You are not no one. His voice was fierce with conviction. And we will discover the truth of your bloodline. The next day, consumed by questions I could not answer, I sought permission to enter the castle archives. The keeper, an elderly beta scholar named Master Aldwin, eyed me with suspicion but granted access when I mentioned the king had questions about ancient bloodlines. I spent hours searching through crumbling texts and faded manuscripts until I found it. A leather-bound tome describing the Moonwolf clan in elaborate detail. They had been rulers before the current dynasties rose, their power absolute, their connection to the moon itself granting them abilities that bordered on divine. My hands trembled as I read about the mark they bore, a silver crescent moon on the left shoulder blade, visible only to those of the same bloodline, or their true mates. I had always hidden the mark on my shoulder, believing it nothing more than a birthmark. But now, with trembling fingers, I reached back and touched the raised skin. It was warm beneath my fingertips, warmer than the rest of my body, as if it held its own internal fire. I was not merely an Omega Maid. I carried the blood of the moon wolves, a heritage I had never imagined, a power I did not understand but could no longer deny. That night, I returned to Christopher's chambers with the book clutched against my chest. He was waiting for me, pacing like a caged beast. The moment he saw my expression, he knew. You found something. I nodded and showed him the mark on my shoulder, then the illustration in the ancient text. They were identical. Christopher's reaction was immediate and visceral. He pulled me into his arms, holding me as if I might disappear. Do you know what this means? His voice was rough with emotion. It means you are not beneath me in status. The Moonwolves were royalty, Jasmine. More than royalty. They were legends made flesh. But I am still just a maid, I protested weakly. No. He tilted my face up to meet his gaze. You are my mate, my equal, and the missing piece of my broken soul, and I will move heaven and earth to keep you safe. As he kissed me again beneath the moonlight streaming through his window, I felt my power pulse in response, recognizing him as completely as he recognized me. We were two damaged souls finding wholeness in each other, and the world would have to accept what fate had decreed. I first became aware of Lady Morgana's hatred during a court gathering in the main hall. I was standing near the servants' entrance, waiting to refill wine goblets as needed, when I felt the weight of her stare like ice against my skin. She was breathtaking in the way a blade is breathtaking, all sharp edges and cold beauty. Hair like polished ebony cascaded down her back. Her gown of crimson silk clung to curves that drew every eye, and her alpha presence radiated power and entitlement. She had been born into one of the oldest noble families in the realm, raised from childhood with the expectation that she would one day wear a crown, and she had chosen Christopher's crown as her prize. I watched her approach the king where he sat on his throne, her movements calculated to display every advantage her bloodline and beauty afforded. She curtsied with perfect grace, her neckline dipping low enough to be provocative without crossing into impropriety. Your Majesty, it brings me such joy to see you returned safely from war, she purred, her voice carrying across the hall. The kingdom has been incomplete without its king, as have I. Christopher's expression remained polite but distant. Lady Morgana, your concern is noted. I saw her smile falter for just a moment before she recovered. I had hoped we might speak privately about matters of state. There are certain alliances that could prove beneficial to the crown, alliances that require careful negotiation. My advisors handle such matters. You may present your proposals to the council. It was a dismissal, gentle but unmistakable. Morgana's eyes flickered with something dark before she composed herself and curtsied again. As she turned away, her gaze swept the hall and landed directly on me. The hatred in that look was so pure, so venomous, that I took an involuntary step backward. She had seen Christopher's eyes follow me, had noticed how his attention tracked my movements even when he appeared focused elsewhere. In that instant, I became her enemy. The whispers began the very next day. Did you hear about the Omega Maid? They say she practices dark magic. I heard she brews potions with herbs stolen from the healer's garden, enchantments to cloud men's minds. No Alpha King would look twice at a common Omega unless she had bewitched him. It is unnatural. The rumors spread through the castle like plague, infecting every conversation. Servants who had been cordial now avoided me. Guards watched me with suspicion. Even the kitchen maids I had once worked beside turned their backs when I entered a room. I knew the source. Morgana was too clever to speak the lies herself, but her ladies-in-waiting whispered them with dedication, and the poison took root quickly in soil already fertile with prejudice. The humiliations came next, carefully orchestrated to appear accidental. A bucket of filthy washwater accidentally spilled across my path as I carried fresh linens to Christopher's chambers, soaking my dress and forcing me to appear before the court looking like a drowned rat. A tray of food I prepared for the king was seasoned with so much salt it was inedible, making me appear incompetent. My small chamber was ransacked, my few possessions scattered and broken, though the guards claimed to have seen nothing. Through it all, Morgana watched with barely concealed satisfaction, her smile sharp as a wolf's. The breaking point came during a formal dinner when I was serving the high table. As I reached to pour wine for a visiting lord, someone bumped my arm hard from behind. The entire pitcher tilted, sending dark red wine cascading across the white linen tablecloth and onto the lap of the lady beside him. The woman shrieked, leaping to her feet. "Clumsy Omega filth! This gown is worth more than your worthless life." I stammered an apology, my face burning with humiliation as every noble in the hall turned to stare. But before I could retreat, Christopher's voice cut through the hall like a blade. "Enough." The single word carried such command that silence fell instantly. Christopher rose from his seat, his expression dark as a thunderstorm. He descended from the dais and came to stand beside me, his presence a shield against their contempt. "Lady Jasmine is under my personal protection," he declared, his voice resonating through the hall. "Anyone who disrespects her disrespects me directly. Anyone who harms her will answer to me personally. Is that understood? Lady Jasmine." He had given me a title I did not possess, elevating me before the entire court. I saw shock ripple through the assembled nobles, saw Morgana's face pale with rage before she masked it behind a false smile. "Your Majesty is most generous," Morgana said, her voice honey-sweet with poison beneath. Though one wonders if such generosity is wise when directed toward someone of such uncertain origins. "One does not wonder about my decisions, Lady Morgana," Christopher replied coldly. "One obeys them." The dismissal was absolute. Morgana curtsied stiffly and returned to her seat, but I saw murder in her eyes. That night, as I prepared for sleep in my chamber, a knock came at my door. I opened it to find Morgana standing in the corridor, without her usual entourage of ladies. She pushed past me into the room and closed the door behind her. "You think you have won something," she hissed, dropping all pretense of civility. "You think because the king has taken an interest in you that you matter. But you are nothing, Jasmine. An Omega Maid playing at being important." "I have made no claims to importance," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I serve the king as commanded, nothing more. Do not lie to me." She moved closer, her alpha presence pressing against me like a physical weight, trying to force my submission. "I have worked toward my place beside Christopher for years. I have cultivated alliances, studied statecraft, prepared myself to be a queen worthy of this realm. And then you appear, a nobody with no name and no family, and dare to steal what is rightfully mine. I have stolen nothing. Whatever exists between the king and myself is not of my making. Her hand shot out and gripped my chin, forcing me to meet her gaze. Hear me well, Omega. I will destroy you. I will strip away every protection, every kindness, every shred of dignity until you are broken and discarded. And when I am done, Christopher will thank me for saving him from your enchantments. She released me with enough force that I stumbled backward. Omegas, who reach above their station, meet terrible ends. Remember that when the darkness comes for you. Then she was gone, leaving me alone with the echo of her threat and the certain knowledge that this was only the beginning. Morgana would not stop until one of us was destroyed, and she held all the power while I had nothing but Christopher's protection. A protection that made me a target rather than keeping me safe. I pressed my hand to the mark on my shoulder, feeling the warmth of my Moonwolf heritage pulse beneath my skin. I did not yet understand this power, but I would need to learn quickly, because Morgana had declared war, and I had no choice but to fight. The summons came at midnight, delivered not by a servant but by Christopher himself. He appeared at my chamber door, cloaked and hooded like a shadow, his eyes gleaming in the candlelight. "Come with me," he said, extending his hand. "There is something I must show you. Something I must say where no walls have ears." I took his hand without hesitation, though I knew the danger of being seen alone with him at such an hour. We moved through the castle like ghosts, taking servants' passages and hidden stairways I had not known existed. Finally, we emerged into the night air, and he led me toward the royal gardens, but not the formal gardens where nobles took their leisure. He brought me to a place I had only heard whispered about, the sacred grove where kings once communed with the old gods, where ancient trees formed a cathedral of living wood beneath the stars. The full moon hung heavy and silver in the sky, casting everything in ethereal light. Christopher removed his cloak and spread it on the grass, then turned to face me. In the moonlight, he looked almost otherworldly, his scars transformed into marks of honor rather than pain. "Jasmine, I can no longer pretend that what I feel for you is anything less than absolute." His voice was raw with emotion. "I have tried to be reasonable, to consider my duty and the expectations of the crown, but reason has no power over what burns between us." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Christopher, what are you saying?" He closed the distance between us, taking both my hands in his. "I am saying that you are my true mate. I have known it since the moment our eyes met across that hall. The bond between us is written in the stars and ancient prophecy, older than laws made by men who never felt what we feel." Tears spilled down my cheeks. "I feel it too. This connection that makes breathing easier when you are near, that makes your pain my pain and your joy my joy. But Christopher, the court will never accept this. I am Omega-born, a servant. They will never allow you to make you my queen," he finished, his jaw tight with frustration. "I know what they will say, what they will do, but I would rather face rebellion than live another day without claiming you as mine." I pulled back slightly, my mind warring with my heart. "There is something you must know, something that may change everything or nothing at all." His hands tightened on mine. "Tell me." With trembling fingers, I turned and pulled aside the fabric covering my shoulder, revealing the silver crescent mark that had been hidden all my life. In the moonlight, it glowed with inner radiance, pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. Christopher's breath caught. He reached out reverently and traced the mark with his fingertips, and where he touched, power sparked like lightning between us. "Moonwolf," he breathed. I knew there was something, but to see the proof. He turned me back to face him, his expression intense. "Do you understand what this means, Jasmine?" The Moonwolves were not merely powerful. They were the first rulers of this realm, blessed by the moon goddess herself. They commanded respect from all alphas, their bloodline considered sacred. If you carry their heritage, you are not common at all. You are more royal than anyone in my court, more royal than me. But I was abandoned, left at an orphanage with nothing, I protested. "How can I be? Because someone wanted to hide you, to protect you from those who would fear your power or seek to use it." His hands cupped my face, his thumbs wiping away my tears. "Your bloodline makes you my equal in every way that matters. No one can deny our union on the grounds of status. You are exactly who you were meant to be, exactly who I was destined to find." The weight of his words settled over me like a mantle, heavy with responsibility and possibility. "I do not know how to be what you need me to be. I do not know how to rule, how to command. You will learn," he interrupted, pulling me close until our bodies pressed together. "And I will stand beside you through every challenge. But first, I need you to understand something fundamental. I do not want you because of your bloodline or your power. I want you because you make me whole. Because when I am with you, I remember what it means to be more than a weapon, more than a king. You make me human again, Christopher." His name left my lips as a prayer and a plea. "Say you are mine," he commanded, his voice dropping to a growl that made my Omega nature sing with recognition. "Say you accept this bond, that you choose me as I choose you. I am yours," I whispered. I have been yours since that first moment, even when I did not understand what it meant. He claimed my mouth in a kiss that stole my breath and my reason. This was not the gentle kiss we had shared before. This was fire and hunger, need and possession. His hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer as if he could merge our souls through touch alone. We sank to the cloak he had spread on the grass, the sacred grove bearing witness as we shed the barriers between us. His touch awakened every nerve in my body, his whispered words of devotion branding themselves onto my heart. When we finally joined, skin to skin and soul to soul, the bond snapped into place with such force that silver light exploded around us. My moon wolf power awakened fully in that moment, surging through my veins like molten silver. I could feel Christopher's emotions as if they were my own, his love and fear and desperate need. The trees around us seemed to bow in reverence, and the full moon above blazed brighter, as if the goddess herself blessed what we had become. We were no longer merely man and woman, king and servant. We were mates, bound by forces older than the kingdom itself, marked by destiny and sealed by choice. As we lay tangled together beneath the stars, his fingers traced lazy patterns on my skin, following the silver glow that still emanated from my mark. "Tomorrow, everything changes," he murmured against my hair. "Tomorrow, I will announce to the court that you are my chosen mate and future queen. There will be resistance, perhaps even threats, but we will face them together." "Together," I echoed, feeling the truth of it resonate through our bond. I did not know what trials awaited us. I did not know if the court would accept what we had become, or if Morgana would escalate her campaign to destroy me. But I knew with absolute certainty that Christopher and I were meant to stand side by side, and that whatever power slept within my bloodline would rise to meet the challenges ahead. The moon watched over us as we claimed each other again and again, sealing a bond that would either save the kingdom or burn it to ash. And I found I did not care which, as long as we faced it together. The morning Christopher was to announce our union to the court, I woke to the sound of guards pounding on my chamber door. I barely had time to dress before they burst in, their faces grim with purpose. "Lady Jasmine, you are to come with us immediately," the captain said, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "What is the meaning of this?" I demanded, trying to project a confidence I did not feel. "Evidence has been discovered." "The king will explain." They escorted me through corridors filled with whispering courtiers, their eyes following me with a mixture of fear and vindication. My stomach twisted with dread. Something had gone terribly wrong. Christopher stood in his council chamber, surrounded by his advisors, his expression carved from stone. On the table before him lay several letters, their seals broken, their contents visible to all present. Beside them stood Lady Morgana, her face arranged in an expression of sorrowful concern that did not reach her cold eyes. "Jasmine." My name on Christopher's lips sounded like a wound. "These letters were found hidden in your chamber. Do you deny writing them?" I stepped closer and looked down at the parchments. My blood turned to ice. They were written in a hand similar enough to mine to be convincing, addressed to commanders in the Northern Kingdom, detailing troop movements and strategic weaknesses of our realm. "I have never seen these letters before," I said, my voice shaking. "Christopher, you must believe me. I would never betray you, never betray this kingdom. They were found beneath a loose stone in your chamber floor, Morgana interjected, her voice dripping false sympathy. Hidden where no casual search would discover them. Tell me, how would anyone else know of such a hiding place? Because someone put them there to frame me. I shot back, meeting her gaze directly. I saw the flash of triumph in her eyes before she masked it. Lord Aldrich, Christopher's most trusted advisor and the one man who had openly supported our union, stepped forward. Your Majesty, I must urge caution. Lady Jasmine has shown nothing but devotion since... He stopped mid-sentence, his face contorting in sudden pain. His hand clutched at his chest, and he staggered backward. I rushed to his side instinctively, catching him before he fell. Aldrich! Someone fetch the healer! I cried out, lowering him to the floor. His lips had already begun to turn blue, foam flecking at the corners of his mouth. I recognized the signs of poison immediately from my time in the castle kitchens. The healer arrived within moments, but I could see in her grim expression that it was too late. Aldrich's breathing grew shallow, his eyes finding Christopher's one last time. Do not let them destroy. His words faded as death claimed him. The chamber erupted into chaos. Nobles backed away from me as if I carried plague, and I realized with horror that several were pointing at my hands, stained with Aldrich's spittle and whatever poison had killed him. She was seen near Lord Aldrich's chambers last night. A voice called out. I turned to see one of Morgana's ladies-in-waiting, her face pale but determined. I witnessed it myself. She slipped from his door looking furtive and afraid. That is a lie! I shouted, but more voices joined the chorus. I saw her in the healer's garden 3 nights past, gathering herbs. She has been brewing potions in her chamber. The servants have smelled strange smoke. Witchcraft. She has bewitched our king, and now murders those who would expose her. The accusations came from all sides, a carefully orchestrated symphony of false witness. Morgana had planned this perfectly, turning every innocent action into evidence of guilt, manipulating prejudices and fears until the court bayed for my blood. I looked to Christopher, silently begging him to see the truth. But his face had gone pale, his eyes distant and haunted. I knew what he was remembering. Elena, his first mate who had betrayed him with smiles and false affection, who had sent his warriors to their deaths. Christopher, please, I whispered. You know me. You know I would never. I thought I knew Elena too, he said, his voice hollow. The words pierced my heart like a blade. I thought I could trust my own judgment about the woman sharing my bed. I was wrong before. Your Majesty, you must order her arrest. Lord Brennan, one of the senior council members, urged. If these accusations prove true and you do nothing, you appear weak. The court will question your fitness to rule, and if she truly carries Moonwolf blood as claimed, another noble added. Her powers could be used against us. She could destroy us all with dark magic. I saw Christopher's internal struggle play across his features. The mate bond pulled him toward me, but trauma and duty and the weight of evidence pulled him away. Morgana watched with barely concealed satisfaction as her trap closed around me. There is a simple solution, Morgana said smoothly. Place Lady Jasmine in protective custody until a full investigation can be conducted. If she is innocent, the truth will emerge and clear her name. If she is guilty. She let the implication hang in the air. Christopher's jaw clenched. I felt his anguish through our bond, the way it tore at him to even consider my guilt. But I also felt his fear. The terror of being made a fool again, of letting emotion blind him to treachery. Jasmine, he said, and I heard my doom in his voice. Until this matter is resolved, I have no choice but to order your confinement. You will be held in the tower chambers under guard. Christopher. No. I started toward him, but guards seized my arms, holding me back. If you are innocent, the investigation will prove it, he continued, refusing to meet my eyes. But I cannot ignore evidence of this magnitude. I cannot put the realm at risk because of my personal feelings. Your personal feelings. I felt tears streaming down my face. I am your mate. You felt our bond seal beneath the full moon. How can you believe I would betray you? Finally, his eyes met mine, and I saw the same tears reflected there. Because I believed that once before, and 300 warriors died for my blindness. I will not make that mistake again. The words shattered something between us. I felt the mate bond strain but not break, held together by threads of love and destiny even as doubt tried to sever it. "Take her to the tower," Christopher ordered, his voice breaking, "and summon investigators to examine every aspect of these claims. I want the truth, whatever it may be." As the guards dragged me from the chamber, I locked eyes with Morgana. She smiled, and in that smile, I saw the depths of her malice. She had not merely framed me for treason, she had used Christopher's greatest trauma against him, poisoning his mind as surely as she had poisoned Aldrich. The tower chamber was cold and dark, the opposite of the warm rooms I had grown accustomed to. As I sat on the bare stone floor, I pressed my hand to my shoulder where the moonwolf mark burned beneath my skin. My power pulsed there, restrained but present, waiting. Morgana thought she had won, but she had made one critical mistake. She had backed a moonwolf into a corner, and my bloodline had not survived for centuries by accepting defeat. The full moon would rise again in 3 nights, and when it did, my true power would awaken. I would prove my innocence. I would expose Morgana's treachery, and I would show Christopher that trust was not weakness, but the greatest strength of all. 3 days in the tower chamber became 3 days in the dungeons. The order came without warning, without explanation. Guards dragged me down endless spiraling stairs into the bowels of Shadowmere Castle, where the air grew thick with damp and despair. They chained me to the stone wall with iron shackles, the metal burning against my skin like fire. The cell was barely large enough to stand in, the only light coming from a guttering torch in the corridor beyond the bars. I could hear water dripping somewhere in the darkness, counting the seconds until dawn, until whatever fate Morgana had planned for me. I had tried to reach Christopher through our mate bond, sending waves of truth and love and desperate plea, but I felt nothing in return except a wall of pain and confusion. He had closed himself off from me, and the absence of his presence felt like missing a limb. Footsteps echoed in the corridor, too light to be guards. My head lifted as Lady Morgana appeared beyond the bars, dressed in a gown of deepest purple, a goblet of wine in her hand. She looked like a queen already, surveying her conquered enemy. "How the mighty have fallen," she purred, sipping her wine. "Though I suppose you were never mighty at all. Were you? Just a maid playing at being important." "Why are you here, Morgana?" I asked, too tired for pretense. "To gloat? To ensure you understand the completeness of your defeat." She stepped closer to the bars, her eyes glittering with malice. "And perhaps to thank you. Your existence made my task so much easier." Christopher was already traumatized, already primed to see betrayal in every shadow. All I needed to do was provide evidence that confirmed his worst fears. The letters. The poison. You orchestrated everything. "Of course." She laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. "The letters were simple forgery. I have had years to study your handwriting from the lists you kept in the kitchens. Lord Aldrich's death was more delicate. A rare poison from the Northern Kingdom slipped into his evening wine. Witnesses carefully positioned to claim they saw you near his chambers. Each piece of evidence building on the last, until even Christopher's love could not stand against the weight of apparent truth. Rage boiled in my chest, but the chains held me fast. "He will discover the truth. You cannot hide your treachery forever, but I can hide it long enough." Morgana's smile turned cruel. "Your public execution is scheduled for dawn. You will be hanged in the courtyard as a traitor and a spy, and I will be there beside Christopher, offering comfort in his grief. By nightfall, he will turn to me, the one woman who tried to save him from your deception. Within a moon's turn, I will be his queen, and you will be nothing but a cautionary tale about Omegas who forget their place." The horror of her plan crashed over me. She had thought of everything, anticipated every move. Christopher will never forgive himself if he executes his true mate. His first mate betrayed him, and he survived. He will survive losing you, too. She finished her wine and set the empty goblet on a ledge. And who knows, perhaps in time, he will even thank me. After all, I will give him what you never could: legitimate heirs of pure alpha bloodline, power without the complication of inconvenient feelings. She turned to leave, her victory complete. "Goodbye, Jasmine. I would say I will remember you, but truly, why would I?" Her footsteps faded, leaving me alone in the darkness with the weight of her confession and the certainty of my death. Dawn could not be more than a few hours away. I pulled against the chains, but they held fast, forged to restrain even the strongest alpha. Despair threatened to drown me. Christopher believed I had betrayed him. Morgana had won. I would die at sunrise, and the truth would die with me. No, the word rose from somewhere deep inside me, not a thought but a command. I was not merely an Omega Maid. I carried the blood of the Moonwolves, a bloodline that had never bowed, never surrendered, never accepted defeat. I closed my eyes and reached for the power I had felt awakening inside me. The mark on my shoulder blazed with heat, silver light spilling from beneath my tattered dress. I pulled on that light, drew it into my chest, my arms, my hands. The chains groaned. My eyes snapped open, glowing silver in the darkness. Strength flooded my muscles, not human strength but something ancient and primal. I pulled again, and this time the chains shrieked in protest. The iron links began to glow red, heating under the force of my Moonwolf power. With a sound like thunder, the chains shattered. I staggered forward, free for the first time in 3 days. My senses exploded outward, suddenly sharp beyond measure. I could hear guards talking 3 floors above, smell the poison residue on weapons stored in the armory, feel the vibration of every footstep in the castle through the stone beneath my feet. This was my true heritage. This was the power my ancestors had wielded. The cell door was locked, but when I placed my hands on the iron bars, they bent beneath my grip like soft clay. I stepped into the corridor, silver light still emanating from my skin, casting dancing shadows on ancient stone. I needed proof of Morgana's treachery. Her chambers would contain evidence, poison bottles, forged correspondence, something to prove her guilt. But first, I had to escape the dungeons without being captured. Footsteps approached from the stairwell, guards coming to check on me. I pressed myself against the wall, and my power responded by bending shadows around me, making me nearly invisible in the torchlight. They passed without seeing me, and I slipped past them like smoke. I moved through the castle depths with newfound grace, my enhanced senses guiding me past patrols and through forgotten passages. The Moonwolf power singing in my veins did more than grant me strength. It gave me knowledge, ancestral memory of this castle built by my bloodline centuries ago, secret ways known only to those who carried the mark. I found Morgana's chambers empty, the lady herself likely preparing for my execution. Her dressing table held what I needed, a small locked box hidden beneath silk scarves. My enhanced strength made short work of the lock. Inside lay vials of poison, letters in Morgana's own hand detailing her conspiracy with Northern Kingdom agents, and a journal documenting every step of her plot to destroy me and claim Christopher's throne. She had kept evidence of her crimes like trophies, so certain of her victory that she had not bothered to destroy it. I gathered the evidence, wrapping it in a cloak I stole from her wardrobe. Dawn light was beginning to paint the eastern sky. I had minutes, perhaps less, before guards came to drag me to the gallows. I had to reach Christopher before Morgana could stop me, had to show him the truth before an innocent woman hung for crimes she did not commit. I was no longer running as a prisoner. I was hunting as a Moonwolf, and my prey was justice itself. The throne room blazed with morning light streaming through tall windows as I approached the great doors. Inside, I could hear Morgana's voice, honey-sweet and poisonous, addressing the assembled court. The Omega Maid's treachery has wounded us all, but none more than our beloved king. I stand before you today to ensure that justice is swift and absolute. We must show our enemies that Shadowmere does not tolerate betrayal. I pushed open the doors with both hands, and they swung wide with a thunderous crash that silenced every voice in the hall. The court gasped as one. I strode through the entrance, no longer wearing a maid's simple dress but draped in the cloak I had taken from Morgana's chambers, my skin still glowing faintly with silver light. The mark of the Moonwolf blazed on my exposed shoulder, visible to all, pulsing with ancient power. The only traitor in this hall is the one speaking lies with such practiced ease, I declared, my voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. Morgana's face went white, then red with fury. "Guards! Seize her! The prisoner has escaped!" But the guards hesitated, frozen by the power radiating from me. They sensed what their instincts told them: I was not prey to be captured, but a predator to be feared. Christopher stood from his throne, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. Through our mate bond, I felt his shock, his hope, his fear of being deceived again, warring with desperate desire to believe in me. "Jasmine," he breathed. "How did you—" "I broke free with the power of my true heritage," I said, walking toward the dais with deliberate steps. "The power you felt awaken in me beneath the full moon. The power that Morgana feared enough to frame me for treason before I could claim my birthright." I opened the cloak and let the evidence fall onto the floor before the throne. Vials of poison rolled across marble, letters scattered like damning leaves, and Morgana's journal landed open to a page detailing her conspiracy. "This poison is what killed Lord Aldrich. It comes from the Northern Kingdom, purchased by Lady Morgana through her own treasonous correspondence with our enemies. These letters prove she has been plotting against this crown for years, waiting for the perfect moment to eliminate anyone who stood between her and the throne." Morgana laughed, but it sounded brittle, desperate. "The ravings of a condemned criminal. She manufactures evidence to save her own worthless life." "Then let us hear from those you threatened into silence," I said. I turned toward the servants' entrance. "Come forward. You need fear her no longer." One by one, they emerged. Kitchen maids who had watched Morgana's ladies plant evidence in my chamber. A stable boy who had seen her meet with cloaked figures at midnight. Lord Aldrich's own servant, who had witnessed Morgana slip something into his master's wine. Each testimony built upon the last, painting an undeniable picture of elaborate conspiracy. The court murmured, their certainty crumbling like sand. Christopher descended from the dais, his eyes locked on mine. "Tell me true, Jasmine. By the bond we share, by the mark you bear, did you betray me?" "Never," I said, letting every ounce of truth flow through our connection. "I would sooner carve out my own heart than cause you pain. Everything I have done out of love for you." I felt his walls crumble. Felt him open the mate bond fully for the first time since my imprisonment. The rush of his love, his anguish, his relief crashed over me like a wave. "I am sorry," he whispered, reaching for me. I let fear blind me. I let her manipulate my trauma. I should have trusted. "Guards! She uses witchcraft to cloud his mind!" Morgana shrieked. She raised her hands, and dark energy crackled between her fingers. "I will not let this Omega filth steal what is rightfully mine." She unleashed her power. Shadows formed into blades hurtling toward me and Christopher. But my Moonwolf heritage rose to meet the threat. Silver light exploded from my body, forming a shield that shattered her dark magic like glass. "You are not the only one with power, Morgana," I said, my voice resonating with ancient authority. "But yours comes from corruption and stolen magic. Mine flows from bloodline and destiny." We clashed in the center of the throne room, silver against shadow, life against death. She was strong. I would grant her that. But I was stronger. The mate bond with Christopher fed my power, and the full awakening of my heritage made me unstoppable. With a final surge of silver light, I broke through her defenses and seized her by the throat, lifting her from the ground with one hand. The court watched in stunned silence as the mighty Lady Morgana dangled helplessly in the grip of the Omega Maid she had tried to destroy. "You are banished from this kingdom," Christopher declared, his voice ringing with royal authority. "If you ever return, the sentence will be death. Take her to the border and cast her out." As guards dragged the screaming Morgana away, Christopher turned to address his court. "Let it be known that Lady Jasmine carries the bloodline of the Moonwolves, the first and truest rulers of this realm. She is my chosen mate, my equal in every way that matters, and she will be your queen." He took my hand and raised it high. "Furthermore, I decree that Omega servitude is abolished throughout the kingdom. No person shall be enslaved or deemed lesser because of their nature. We begin a new era today, built on justice and equality." The court erupted, some in applause, others in protest. But Christopher's word was law, and his power, combined with mine, would ensure the changes took root. 5 years later, I stood on the same balcony where I had once served wine to nobles who never saw me. Now I wore a crown, and beside me stood Christopher, his hand resting on my waist as we watched our twin children play in the gardens below. A boy with his father's dark hair and my silver eyes. A girl with my features and her father's fierce spirit. The kingdom had transformed. Omegas now held positions in court, served as advisors and scholars, lived lives of dignity and choice. The changes had not come easily, but they had come. Christopher pulled me close and kissed my temple. Do you ever regret it? The struggle, the danger, the burden of the crown? I looked into his storm-gray eyes and saw the man who had moved heaven and earth to claim me, who had learned to trust again despite his scars, who loved me with an intensity that still took my breath away. Not for a single moment, I said. You were my obsession. Now you are my partner, my equal, my home. What began as forbidden desire had become a dynasty. What started with a servant and a king had transformed an entire realm, and our love, forged in fire and sealed beneath the moon, would echo through generations yet to come. Dear listeners, if this story of love, betrayal, and redemption touched your heart, I would love to know, where are you listening from? Share your kingdom with me, whether it be near or far, and let me know if tales of forbidden romance and powerful destinies speak to your soul as they do to mine.